Hello and welcome back to Darkstorm Rising. Today we're going to be looking at 40k again, in particular the Blood Angels, and Astaroth is my chosen subject. Really beautiful figure, lots of little bits going on there. There's going to need some serious focus to get the miniature finished. But Astaroth is the one we have chosen, the High Chaplain of the Blood Angels. He was tasked with slaying and putting down those who succumbed to the Black Rage, most feared and most respected of his chapter, and quite an ominous bearing that the character has as well. So I'm going to try and convey that in the paintwork. Well, where are we going? I think to the table. So here he is, mighty Astaroth, beautiful model, love the way it's been sculpted. We're going to start with the wings, and we're going to just gently blend from a very dark tone. So we're starting with burnt red, and then what we'll do is we'll slowly work from burnt red with a mixture of black, as we have here. We'll do the whole of one feather, and we'll just do one feather, and then I'll complete the rest of the wing. But bit of black with burnt red, and then we're moving on to a slightly lesser dark version of the same mix, just adding a little bit more of the burnt red to bring the tones up. And just trying to be quite gentle with it as well, and then we'll take it a shade lighter, and just with it being wet, the colours will tend to sink into each other, and it's keeping it wet enough so that you can carry on working, but not letting it dry too much so you start to drag the paint. And that was starting to happen, so I've left it to dry a little bit. The paint's still wet, but it's a lot drier. You can tell from the texture as you look at it. And then we've added in some gory red for the next mixture. So we've got a bit of gory red mixed in with the burnt red, no black at all now. And then we've got some scarlet blood mixed in with the gory red, bringing those tips to a much brighter, vibrant colour. It looks quite shiny here, but once it's dry, it does really settle down, and it looks a very nice, smooth blend through. And then just right on the edges of the tips, we're going to have some scarlet blood all on its own, just to really push those highlights. Well, I've completed the wing, so you can now see how the blending works on the whole thing. But I've also completed the arch, and now I'll show you how to do the arch in brief on the other side. So just the same, exactly the same colour pattern, it's just placement here, and trying to make sure that we've got some symmetry. So we start off with the burnt red mixed with a black, and just define where we're going to start to push colour. And we're just working our way along the edge, and then we'll, as the light doesn't catch the overhang, we'll now work on the upper surface and push those colours through, and then drop down the border of the wing, so slowly working the arch and joining the two sections almost together. Just where the light would catch on the upper surface. And then we'll work down the side of the wing, and we'll aim to be completing colour by the bottom. And then we'll just slowly work into lighter colours, gently pushing towards the scarlet blood in the final colour. Right, so just starting to see hues of red coming through at this point. and we're now working with just the burnt red on its own. And then once you've completed it in the burnt red, we're then going to do more of the highlights, as you can see here, in the mixture of gory red with the burned red, and now starting to push the ends of the wings, and finally just adding some scarlet blood to the tips, and just doing that slow blend like we did on the rest of the wing. I'll finish off the rest. So here we are, we've finished both sides of the wing now. It's looking pretty damn good, if I say so myself. But on to the body. So we're going to do the armour and the leg sections. I've had a little play to see what I think to technique will, or what technique will be best for this. And I've started with burned red on its own. So I'm keeping the colour scheme in keeping with the wing. Hopefully that should then give it a good blend. Once we've actually got a layer of burned red on. Now, when I first started doing the technique, I was actually painting each stripe individually. After a little while, I did learn that using the side of the brush and catching the strands was much more effective and quicker. But it took me a little while to catch on. So, tip there for you guys. Also, although I am painting, and we're now moving on to a layer of scarlet blood, and although I am painting the like leg sections first, the actual panels, a tip for you if you're doing this model would be I would just go around everywhere and paint all the gold first. Otherwise you're going to be so likely to catch everything. Once we've got the scarlet blood, we're then going to put a layer of basic flesh tone on, and then recoat it with scarlet blood again, just to really make the colour pop. And then following on from that, as we just come to the end of really making that scarlet blood pop and be really vibrant, we're now adding some amaranth red over the top, and all of these highlights from the basic flesh tones, repeating the red, then adding the amaranth, that's all going on in like the top third of the plate to like give it some depth. We're now going to recoat with basic flesh tone again so that we can reapply the amaranth and really have those upper edges really vibrant as they're catching the light. Don't forget though, as the colours are all fairly wet, they will sort of saturate into each other, and it will darken it a little from this initial really vibrant step. Right, on to putting some gold on. So this is Army Painter's Greedy Gold. I think it really does suit this model very well. And as we progress around the model, definitely I would suggest getting all the gold, get it down, get it done. There's that many like crevices and nooks and crannies on this piece that if you're painting any of the other bits, you're guaranteed you're going to catch them with the gold. And gold is one of those colours that tends to, if it finds a crevice, it'll bleed. It's not, although it's acrylic, it's a bit like an oil. Now what I'm going to do to give it some depth and give it some tone is I'm applying some, this is Army Painter's dark tone, and it's a nice deep rich brown, and it just gives it that depth in the gold. It makes it look like shadows. I'm going to apply this to any recess overlap as well in the gold, like here on the sandals. And it is one of those washes that if it is that you make an error, it's very forgiving. You can just like suck it back up with a dry brush, and it's almost like it wasn't there. But it's very good for not only defining outlines as I did with the sandal, but also adding some lovely tones to the gold. So on the lower portions where you would get shadow, definitely apply some of the dark tone there, and it just really does make the higher tones just pop so vibrantly. So we'll work our way around the rest of the model, getting the gold on, as per my advice, so that it's all done, and then we can start to think about what else to work on the model. As you can see on the chest section here, just touching those little sections, the gold ran straight into the chest. Now obviously I can clean that up before I'll do another layer of paint, but yeah, you need to be aware of that, and I think we're there with the gold. Is I'll now work around the gold. I'll just put in, I'll show you where some of the shadow placement was for me when I was actually applying. So again, we're using the dark tone by Army Painter, and just applying it to like the downward surfaces, anything with a little bit of a hollow, some of the edges between different plates, just to give them some definition. But as you'll see, we're just sort of working our way around, and just sort of, the other thing you can use it for is to emphasize the highlights. So if either side of a bright area, somewhere that's going to hit the sun, is if you put some extra tone in, then actually it will lift that area even brighter. Just wanted to show you the wings on the back. I do go a bit heavy here and make a bit of a blob, but as you can see, I just wipe it on a rag and then lift off the paint, and it does come off really easily, and it's very modulatable. So just around the belt, just to darken up a little bit, edges of the corners. It's all just all about telling the story, about trying to convince somebody that there is sun shining, that there are shadows, and this is not just a miniature. So on to highlights, exactly the opposite now. Anywhere that's sort of gonna catch the sun and be gleaming in the light, those upper surface areas, now we're going to make those pop and counter all the shadows we've put in, and it's just catching all those edges that are on the uppermost portion of the model, and on the chest where like those spikes come in, it is just exaggerating and making a more believable picture. And it all takes time. That's the frustrating part. This model took an absolute nightmare amount of time. I thought this was going to be like a 3 or 4 hour piece, and I was so wrong. On the boots, I don't know if you noticed there, but I put like 2 areas of highlight, and often on an upper surface you'll get like a main highlight, and then just to the right or the left you'll get like a secondary highlight, and it's just trying to mimic those things that happen in reality. But I hope you can see that both the toning and the highlighting are working well. Right, so I'm going to use virtually the same recipe on all of the rest of the model, but I thought you would like to see exactly what I do. So I'm just going to sort of concentrate mainly on the chest section and then some upper areas. So essentially we're just putting on the burnt red. We'll get that a decent coverage across some of the sections. Now this is a fiddly bit on the model, trying to get work around these pieces here. Can't say this was my most enjoyable part of the model, and actually I'm a firm believer in you can get away with like building a model, and those bits that you can't see, you can just hide in shade. This model is one of those models where if I had my time again, would I build it in separate parts? So now we're adding scarlet blood as a highlight layer. So we'll just go around and highlight. But yeah, this model would be certainly one that would give me pause for thought in the future. I would maybe think about not mounting the wings, not putting the backpack on, and having some better exposure to the model. I got there, but it wasn't easy. So we're going to work around the model, just applying our first layer of blood red. And some areas, unfortunately, it's not quite as easy to get the side of the brush in to do the work for you. Now I'm going to start to push the highlights a bit. So we're going to use basic skin tone. It's got a nice bit of yellow in the skin tone colour, and it's going to help us show sunlight shining down on this section of armour. So anything facing upwards, so upper gauntlets, upper thighs, chest section, inner section of the ribs, inner section of the abs, all of that got a good coat of white, or basic skin tone as it is. And then once I've been round and done all the highlights, we went back in with a scallop blood and just made it really pop on those highlights there. So let's go back in on the chest. And it just really does make that red pop. Yeah, it's looking absolutely gorgeous. And then once we've actually got the red on, then we go back in with the amaranth red and just make it even brighter. And just make those chest sections really, really glow. But if you notice, what I'm doing is I'm only hitting the upper surface areas, and on the abs, I'm hitting the sort of centre section of the abs, trying to make sure that we like really pop the colour. And then just to really reinforce, I'm going to go back in with the basic skin tone now, and then on top of this, we're going to then go in with the amaranth red. But this is right extreme highlights now. This is like the real pinnacle upper edges are getting this, and then we go back in. Now at the moment he looks like he's glowing like a Necron, but the colours do subdue after a little while, and I did apply a little bit of scarlet blood back in just to dull the edges down a little bit, but the amaranth really does, when you actually get to the end, it does make this chest section look absolutely beautiful. Okay, onto the skulls and the bonework, and there are so many skulls. So we're going to start with the base tone. We're going to start with Rhinox hide, and just work our way around them. It's just a bit of a plod, but that's getting on the base layer, and we'll work our way around. And here we are on the left shoulder skull. This one's a huge skull. It looks so gorgeous, and once we get to the final stages, you'll see how beautiful this skull looks. The axe, every single shard of the axe is part of somebody's spine, so we've got to make sure that we try and, if you look, there's the dorsal processes at the back there. So we need to make sure we catch those. Then we swap over to Doomble Brown, and now we're starting to go into like mid-tones, and just start to work a bit of colour in. It's not really until we get to our next colour that they start to look vaguely scully. The Doom Bull really just makes them look just dirty. It's not but it's like one of those essential steps you've got to do. On his right shoulder pad, he has got like a million skulls here, and it's just trying to be really, really gentle. So you catch the eye sockets, put a little stripe across each forehead onto the brows, and like not miss a skull. Once you get onto the spine on the axe, again, it's just being careful. It's ever so easy, I don't know why, but it's ever so easy to actually get into the gaps between the bones on the axe. I found it ever so easy that the brush would slip into the gap and catch, and I had to do quite a bit of correction on there, so you have to be quite careful there. So just a bit of warning, heads up. We're starting to progress with these mid-tones. And now on to some substance. So this is World War II Japanese yellow, or uniform yellow, is it? Something like that. But this, I love this as a pre-highlight on bone. It just works so well. It's a lovely, lovely colour. So you can already see what's happening just by putting this colour on the bone. Looks absolutely beautiful. And if you're looking for like dirtier coloured skulls, weathered skulls, this is the colour to go for. On this model in particular, they're much brighter, they're much more vibrant skulls, like bleach bone. And so you do end up going a couple of levels higher in the colour scheme. But if you're looking for like chaos, dirty stuff, this is the colour to go for. And then maybe like a little bit of bone white highlight on top of it. But really do like this World War II Japanese yellow on a skull. Anyway, shut up gibbering and let's get on with the painting. As I apply this colour, you'll just see what I mean. And this left-hand side shoulder pad is just like, it's awesome. There's this gopping great big skull on there with big fangs on it. It's like awesome. And then back to the axe, and it's just like hitting those higher surface areas, and then on the higher portion where they look like lumbar bones, but on like the dorsal section of the lumbar bone on the higher surface, there is a flat surface to actually catch and hit the highlights with, as well as the ribs at either end. But it's on catching those like higher aspects that you tend to like just drift into the gap, and if you're not careful, you end up highlighting the gap. You have to be quite careful with these bones. I mean, just with the Japanese yellow on, it is looking so beautiful. Right, onto bone white. And to really start to push those highlights. I've thinned the paint down a little bit with some water here, just to like wash it over some of the yellow as well, rather than just saturate and lose all the yellow. The lighting does tend to really pick up on the bone white, and so it makes it look even brighter than it is. But at this point, I was starting to be really pleased with how the skulls looked. just being really, really careful when you're like trying to catch those teeth and not just blob it all into one continuous mass. As you can tell, all the time I'm checking how much paint is loaded on the brush. All the time I'm using my hand to like wipe off that excess so that I've got just the right controllable amount on the brush. Right, so now we're going to start to head for some highlights. Let's get some bone white on here and really start to make this skull pop. And it's essentially it's just placement on the upper surfaces and just trying to catch where the light would land. The main part is just being careful on the teeth. They're quite close together. It's just trying to catch them one at a time so they don't just look like just a white blob. Same again for the spine. Again, watching those gaps in between. It's so easy to slip into the gap. And also painting the skulls on the shoulder pad. The skulls, if you're not careful, you can make them just look like they're a dirge and they all blend into one. So it is being quite careful with your placement and trying to make sure that each piece is an individual and that you don't like just end up just due to impatience more than anything, just end up trying to like just catch them all with a dry brushy type effect, and then it just blurs them all into one. I think this is every single aspect of this miniature demands like concentration. It's a really demanding piece, but once you get this piece finished, it's like such a beautiful piece to look at. So worth all the effort. Just putting a little bit of skeleton, I think it's skeleton horde or skeleton bone on there. Skeleton horde, it's a wash. Just to resaturate with a little bit of like bony colour again. And it automatically goes into the recesses, so it sorts out any problems you've got with overwash or over highlight even. And now we've gone to the main highlight. We're going on to a little bit of white added to the bone white, and then just really punching those highlights. I probably wouldn't go quite as bright as normally myself, but the box art has got really bleached bone art on it, and I wanted to pay a little bit of tribute to the box art. And there were one or two variations that I've already made already, and there's one or two more to come, to be honest. But the bone work, I thought, we'll try and stay a little bit true to the artwork. And trying to get the camera to see all the angles I'm having to paint at, and for me to be able to see them is like, sometimes it's just a nightmare to try and get the images for you and me to be able to see what I'm doing. There's nothing more satisfying than when you start to get that final punch on the highlights of a skull. There's something so rewarding about painting a skull. I've got a feeling, even with some serious editing, this is going to be a bit of a long video, but I'll try and keep it down if I can. Okay, reinstating the highlights after the wash. Yeah, she's looking good. If only the camera would focus for me. Come on, camera. Right, onto the main bodywork again. So we're back to doing like the burnt red again as our base coat. And we're going to work around all of the armour plates, adding a little bit of black in here just to darken her up a little bit. I'm trying to remain true to what we've done already. I want it to all work together, and if I start getting a bit lazy now, it's just going to mean that I've got more work in the future. So now onto the plates of armour and the jetpack. On the front of the model there's very little actual painting to do. It's dominantly on the back of the model, mainly orientated to the jetpack. A couple of little plates over his bump and his codpiece to do. So we start with the burnt red again, and then we'll move on, and we'll pop a layer of gory red over the top, and just pick out the highlights. And then try and give some light definition to the jetpack itself. So the burnt red's going to stay in the deep recesses. This is sort of going to be more or less our mid-tone, and so anything that catches some light is going to get a decent coating of the gory red. And just trying to leave like the edges of the balls of the jetpack and any joining area just a little bit darker, not really going right into it with the gory red. Trying to give it a bit of definition. There's a few little spikes on the top here, and I'm trying again to leave like a little ring of darkness around those spikes. And then to pick out the highlights a bit better, we've moved on to the scarlet blood. And if you look, I'm leaving like some tonal lighting here and not going for full coverage. Just trying to catch those more extreme upper highlights. Well, that's not really extreme, that's like 50-50 to be honest. But you can see there that compared to the jetpack sections in the background, the actual exhaust section is now looking, the two balls are looking a little bit brighter, and the upper surface area. Now what I'm doing is I'm working on the bottom portion of the jetpack, the exhaust, and making sure that we get some angle of light penetration, so those upper surfaces that are visible from this angle get a heavier coating of the more vibrant red. And then we'll move on to his rear armour plates and just give those a little covering, avoiding there's like little indentations in them. I'm leaving those really dark, so avoiding those just to give it a bit more of a dimension to it. And coming back in with the scarlet blood again, just to reinforce the colour and try and make it pop a little bit more. Well, we're now really getting onto the home stretch. She's looking pretty good. Just a few finishing touches to do really. So all of the articulations, these are just going to be in gunmetal. And we'll just work our way around the miniature, getting those all tidied up. Right, and the next thing I think we need to do is just, I was not quite happy with the backpack, and so I've just decided to get the amaranth red out and just push a few of the highlights. Parts of it were just looking a little bit too flat, and I just wanted to give it that extra little bit of dimension. Is dimensionless a verb? But I wanted to give it a bit more dimension. So I've just gone in to the exhaust port, top of the backpack, and just pushed those highlights, little thin lines of extra highlight on the backpack. You can see the top of the exhaust nozzles, and then tips of the wings, just to give it that uniformity of colour across the model. And then the axe. So first of all, we'll just give it a base coat of blue. I've got a mixture of sea blue and turquoise. Tiny little bit of turquoise, dominantly sea blue. Nice dark background to work on. And then what I'll do is, for where the electric charges come, the little dots will be in white. Then immediately around there, what we're going to do in a second is stipple around it. But first, while that's drying, we'll swap over to the face mask, which I'm just going to do in Deck Tan. It's quite a nice pallid colour, a little bit of an off-greenness to it, and it just enhances that morbid nature of Astaroth, rather than just being like a pale white. Right, and then what we'll do is we'll get back to the axe. Should have had a chance to dry now. And now I've got turquoise, and that's more or less turquoise with a tiny little bit of the dark sea added. And then what I'm doing is getting some more dark sea, adding it to the mix and blending the gap and trying to make it look as natural a transition as possible. And then at the other end of the axe, we'll do exactly the reverse. We'll start to add more and more white to the turquoise and give it a bit of a frosty edge to the axe. And then we'll do exactly the same process on the head of the axe, so that there's a dark bit left in the middle, and we're left with this transition to an icy electric discharge at either end of the axe. So we'll just get the rest of the highlighting done at the tip of the axe here, and then we can start to pull it together, and then we'll draw on a few lightning bolts towards the end once we've got all this blending done, and see if we can't get it to look like there's a big electrical discharge about to go on and someone's getting it right in the face. Okay, let's just work a little bit more on this, getting the transitions right. And then what we'll also do is we'll draw a white edge around the outside aspect of the axe and frame the actual axe head itself. Okay, I think you can see like the frosty aspect coming together now. So this is, like I said, just getting a bit of stippled white, and then we'll slowly again blend out into the rest of the axe, and try and get a sort of electrical discharge effect going on. Okay, so that's it blended through. Now we're drawing in the lightning bolts, and these are just with white, a little bit of water in there just so that it's easy to feather. And then a bit of gunmetal on the rods themselves on both sides of the axe. And we'll also use the gunmetal on the wire at the back. A little bit of neutral grey over all of the harsh edges on the actual black aspect of the electrics of the axe, just to give them a little bit of depth, a little bit of edge highlighting. Just slowly work our way around those, tidying it up. Really are on the home stretch now with this miniature. We'll do the purity seals. They're just going to be simply in gory red, and then we'll highlight them in a moment with scarlet blood. In the meantime, while the gory red is drying, we'll just touch up all the exhaust ports with gunmetal. Gunmetal or plate mail. I think I use gunmetal on this occasion, and just give them a little bit of a tidy up. I'm not even going to, because they are underneath, I'm not going to bother with any highlights on them. I won't bother. If you really want to, you could put a little bit of Runefang steel right on the edges, but I don't think the miniature needs it. It's there's plenty of detail draws your eye on this miniature. It doesn't need anything extra really. And now we'll work on the purity seals themselves. And that's actually a little bit of brown added to some tan earth, and then just worked over. Then stipple highlighted, trying to maintain towards the edges and any upper surface of the scroll with bone white, and then just working the way down the edge of it, putting the highlight in, and then as the curl of the scroll comes towards you, any round section that's towards you, just working on that surface as well and giving it a bit of a brighter touch. And then just dabbing in a few more highlights in a bit of ivory. And just really pushing the highlights a little, be very careful because it's such a bright colour. Then just a little bit of a wash with some sepia, and that's heavily watered down sepia, or else you will end up ruining the colour. But it like here where I'm just putting it in the gap between the two scrolls, it just gives you increased definition. And then we'll put a little blood angel symbol at the bottom of the scroll, little blood symbol there, and then we'll do a little bit of writing on it, and that should really just set off the scroll. I'm just putting in a single red letter here before I do the writing, and I'll work the writing around that red letter, and just inane scribblings across it. His oath of commitment, or oath of, can't remember, oath of something or other. I'm sure you'll tell me in comments. And then we'll work on the hair. Really are at the final step now, just prior to basing. So we'll get the hair done, we'll get him based. And the hair we're just doing in gory red. And then as we move on to the highlights, we'll catch those with the scarlet blood, keeping that uniformity still with the model. Extreme highlights with a bit of amaranth red. But that's really drawing us to the close of this video. Really have enjoyed painting this model. He's got some lovely aspects to him, but I think we need to get the basing done and get ready for the grand reveal. Wow, that was an epic. I really didn't appreciate just how detailed that miniature is. Absolutely stunning figure, but there's quite a few fiddly bits going on in there, and it took me over a day to actually complete the model. So, wow. I think the results though, are where I wanted them. He does look nice and sinister. I think I've got that brooding presence out of him. Love the reds, really resplendent in the reds, and I was really happy with the paint scheme on the wings. I thought that came through. I thought that was, the box art just looked a bit meh. I just think it needed a little bit more, and I'm really pleased with the result I've got from the blending of the red. So pretty happy with the figure overall. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you do, please do like and subscribe, and I'll try and get on with some more videos. In the meantime, are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! Catch you in the next one.